Right, we're live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Thursday No Code Ops Community Live Show. Today, we're streaming from Paris as we're here for the No Code Summit that's happening in town, and we're super excited for it. We're meeting so many great people from the No Code field. It's so inspiring to see, how much this technology is just improving as we speak. Like the speed at which these tools are being created and the ideas that are being employed in no code are just mind-blowing. So we're very, very excited. Apologies if the connection is not as great as always. I hope it is. But today we're here, so for the sake of being consistent, I just wanted to make sure that this event would happen, even though, I'm in a different place, different town, because we love no code, we love no code ops, and we stick to it no matter what. So today's guest speaker is Rahul Desai. He's the general manager at the operations cluster at Silva. So let's go and meet him into our Gather town. So Gather is the metaverse where we usually meet every Thursday to have these kind of interactive talks. So here I am into the breakout room, and I'm gonna join the people in the arena. Alrighty. Hi everyone. So I was just launching the YouTube. Phil is here. Hi Phil. Hi Jen. And Vivid Squid. I don't remember your name, but Vivid Squid is still a very cool nickname.
I'm David.
David. Hi, David. And welcome, Rahul, our guest speaker.
Hello.
I'm very excited to have you here today. So I was just saying in our presentation on YouTube that you're the general manager of the operations cluster at Silva. Do you you're gonna have some minutes to explore on that, because I'm really curious to hear what your role is all about. And today specifically, you're here at No Code Ops to talk education, so rethinking operations in education, which is something that is really dear to me as well, because I come from an education background. I used to be a primary school teacher for 8 years, and now I'm here into the no code space. So I'm really intrigued by your talk, and just to be here and see where these will take us today. So do you want to give us a little bit of an insight on what you do, what your background is, and feel free to go ahead.
So when I signed up to speak, I was running an online business school called Upslope. And the company that I work for now, Silva, actually bought Upslope to provide education to their members, who are mainly chiefs of staff and like biz ops managers. So my role is now not only providing education to those people from the curriculum that I was working on, but also growing the community, making sure that people are engaged and finding value. Probably a lot of what Claudia does, just for a somewhat different audience. So really, really excited to be here and talk about, what my vision was for this education program that has now found a new home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we can definitely give each other some tips. I love to meet community people. I was just saying that today we're in Paris for the No Code Summit that's happening in town. And I've met so many great people, like from the no code field, and we're community people. So it's our kind of event. It's perfect. Just going around, introducing yourselves, just like meeting new people is absolutely fantastic. Did you have some slides for us to share?
I have a written document that I can share, so let me do that.
Let's pull that up.
Screen share.
Very happy to see Phil is here as well. He's here in Paris, so I'm very impressed that he made it as well to be in the event. Hi, Phil.
Hey, so excited to be here.
Hello.
Hey.
Are people able to see this?
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
This is the business case for Upslope, that business school that I founded. And I thought this would be interesting to share, because I was struggling to understand, why do people not have the skills I want to hire for? What are they learning in their undergraduate or graduate programs? And where is the mismatch coming from? And so this is, in some sense, the research that I did to actually start the company, and then the solution that I came across. And I would welcome people saying, like, actually, you're wrong because, or, any feedback that people have, I would love to hear it. But I started off by looking at economic data. And what I learned was that there's so much underemployment in the US and probably more broadly around the world. But every year, 43% of college graduates, or getting close to 1 million people a year, are underemployed in their first job. And 54% of students took on student loan debt with an average of about 40K. And the new grad salary is 50K. So that debt is really hard to service, right? You can see that there's a reason why the US government did debt forgiveness very recently this year. So this is really troubling, right? There's these people coming out of school, their salaries are very low, they have a lot of debt, they're underemployed, and worse yet, those who start underemployed tend to stay underemployed. So 66% of those people are remaining underemployed 5 years after they graduate. And all of this has effects for those people's children as well. It's decreased social mobility, and that also, like, children are very much shaped by their communities, the home they grow up in, etc. And so if you have decreased social mobility, it's very likely you pass that on to your children. And so I learned all of this, and I was stunned, right? I wanted to understand, why is college failing these people? Because so frequently we used to say, oh, college is the ticket to the American dream or to better your life wherever you are. And it seems to be falling short for a lot of people. And so then I looked at, why is it happening? And the conclusion I came across was that higher education is not really teaching career skills. There are these bachelor's degree programs, even really good ones, that are not taking into account the skills that people need to get that great job. And I won't rehash, but there's some associations of universities and the Society for HR Management, and they basically did these massive studies on what was missing. And they found that it's not just soft skills that are missing, it's also hard skills, right? People who go to learn analytics or business or whatever are not even learning the bare minimum that they need in those programs. And I think this comes down to academics really disagree on what college is all about. Is it a business? Is it not a business? Is it meant to prepare students for jobs? Is it to make them well-rounded? And no one can really answer these questions for me, including people who run like innovation labs at universities. And so my approach, or where I saw the solution to the problem, was, let's just decide that Upslope is going to be about getting people a job. It's going to be a business, and we are going to be laser focused on getting people those skills that they need very tactically. But even like digging deeper, all right, so we're failing to develop skills in higher ed. Why is that happening? And this gentleman, Andy Matischak, who led R&D at Khan Academy, coined this phrase, enabling environments. And that's a scenario which expands the participant's capacity to do something they find meaningful or impactful. And the focus is not on lecturing at people. It's not telling them what to do. It's on giving them a goal, right? Putting something in front of them and saying, go get that. For example, a research lab isn't about instilling knowledge about the graduate discipline. It's about making discoveries, right? The environment is focusing on what the skills are for, and the participants are learning them in pursuit of the goal. And so if you try and make people learn without showing them the purpose, the students don't really have a reason to learn, to engage in the skill development. So these educational institutions, right, like great colleges, Harvard, Stanford, Oxford, they're all lecturing at people, and they're teaching without focusing on what the knowledge is for. And that's just not effective, right? So the best way to set up one of these enabling environments is to focus on expert use, right? If we're trying to build a site on no code, the best way to do it is to go look at Bubble and build the site, right? It's not reading guidance on here's how I built my no code website. It's just messing around inside of these tools. And so if we know what these enabling environments are all about, why is it so hard to create them? Why can't we immerse learners in places like this? And the reason that higher ed can't do this is because of something called Bloom's 2 sigma problem. In the 80s, this PhD scientist, Benjamin Bloom, discovered that the average student who was tutored on a one-on-one basis performed 2 standard deviations better than people learning via lectures and other conventional methods. And the average tutored student was above 98% of students learning the regular way. And the reason we can't do this in our modern educational infrastructure is that it's really costly to do one-on-one tutoring. And we like to factory farm, right? We set people up in their grades and we advance them forward all at the same time, not paying mind to, maybe there is a 6th grader who's at the same level as a 4th grader, who's at the same level as a 10th grader. Because we break people into these arbitrary grades based on age, we are advancing them not on their mastery, but on, this arbitrary distinction of I'm such and such years old. And so to summarize this problem, we have an underemployment and student debt crisis. This is attributable to a skills gap. These people are failing to gain skills because higher education has not constructed adequate enabling environments. And for reasons of cost and cohorting, we cannot make use of the best educational know-how to set up these enabling environments one-on-one. So I'll pause there, I think, if there are any questions, or should I keep going to the end?
Let's see. Are there any questions from the community here on that note? I'm really this is really interesting to hear because one-on-one, as you're saying, could be such a powerful technique to use, and it's so empowering towards the individual. But as you were saying, the costs of sustaining such a teaching technique, it's just not scalable right now. So I'm really intrigued to see where this continues to.
Yeah. All right, I'll keep going.
Yeah, I think we can carry on. People here, you can use the chat as well if you want to write down your questions. Just
awesome.
I'll let you know.
Cool. So then flipping over to the solution, right? We know what the problem is. What is the solution? And so I kept talking about these enabling environments, and I then started trying to think about how do you create these? And the reason that I thought that and why enabling environments are the way to go is because acquiring these skills that matter, right? Data analysis, project management, etc., can add up to 20% to a college graduate's earnings. So then I sat down and figured out, all right, let's create these. Most traditional media fall short, right? Textbooks, uninteractive video, typical mass media, they don't do a good job of facilitating participation. And so that's a disconnect between consuming that media and doing something with it. And recall that enabling environments are about striving towards that goal, whatever it is you're trying to do, more so than just reading and sitting with that material. So instead, you want to equip people to do the work. If someone wants to learn logo design, the best way for them to do that is go out and try and make a logo for someone. And by virtue of working with a client, they'll learn what works, what doesn't work, what price is right, all that sort of stuff. And this applies for most business skills, right? If you want to be an executive assistant and you need to schedule these very complicated meetings at high-end venues, the best way to do that is just to start trying to do it. Same thing for corporate strategy as a consultant. Same thing for designing processes as an ops manager. Same thing for literally any no-code tool you could think of. And so setting up these novices in enabling environments to do real work for real clients is the best way to enable skill development. But who in their right mind would accept freelance work from a novice? And how does one bring these novices to participate at an expert level? So one of the other pieces of Andy Matischak's theory is these enacted experiences. And those are something that participants feel they've brought about, but in reality, they were created by someone else, an author. And so this is like Inception to a certain degree. It's putting an idea in someone's head that they think is their own idea. And the way this happened in history is you'd have an apprentice and you'd have a master. And, they'd work on blacksmithing together or forging horseshoes or, tilling the land. And the person would basically be off doing their own work under the supervision of that expert. And today, mentorship has sort of gone in a very different direction. It focuses on Q&A and talking to each other, not really doing the work. And so to create these enacted experiences, you need a connection between people's actions and what comes out of it. It's not enough to talk about the work. And so how do you transform mentorship into apprenticeship? My view of this is there is a whole bunch of people now in the modern era, especially after COVID, who are starting to freelance. And these freelancers need help, right? They need other people to enable them to be able to take on more clients, to do more work. This is also very true in the no-code space because there are so many amazing things we can do now using tools like Retool, and I mentioned Bubble earlier, Zapier, etc. So that's one good thing, right? There's freelancers who need people to help them. And then we talked about Bloom's Two Sigma problem and one-on-one apprenticeship and how that was really expensive and colleges couldn't sustain it. So how do you subsidize that? And I think you do that by transforming education into a legitimate business activity. You make it about consulting. And so Upslope was basically, our goal was to put together our learners or apprentices together with mentors, the people who would teach them the skills they needed, and clients, right? So we would find people who either worked at firms or were freelancers, and they could help our learners figure out whatever they needed. So let's say I wanted to be a marketing manager at a payment processing company. Upslope would help that learner find that type of person to mentor them.
Is that still running? I'm going to ask you a question here. Is Upslope still... Yeah, cool.
Sorry, wait, what's the question?
Is Upslope still running? Is it a project that you're still working on? Because you seem to be talking about it in the past.
Yeah, I am still running it. I'm actually teaching a lesson tonight. We're starting our unit on data analysis, which is
awesome.
Really interesting. Yeah. And so how do you create this modern apprenticeship, right? How do you subsidize one-on-one or like very small group training? First, we look for people with specific ambition, right? We need people who know what they want. Otherwise, we can't teach them. We would spend all our time figuring out what they want and trying to teach them, infinite number of things, not just the very focused skills they need. And so the ideal apprentice knows where they want to work and the types of roles they want to hold. And this is necessary because we can use the candidate's desired job descriptions to identify their skill gaps and then set up apprenticeships to gain those skills. And so what we do is in our admissions process, we optimize for really hungry, driven people with specific ambition, and these people become apprentices. And right now we focus on operations roles, which we feel are pretty underserved with current boot camps, which tend to focus on product, engineering, stuff like that. We go through a discovery phase, which is understanding their ambition. What companies are they interested in? What roles do they want? What are their strengths and weaknesses? We build out a Kanban board of the jobs they want to pursue. We distill out the skills they need for those jobs based on the job descriptions. And then we put them through our sort of foundational program, which we call Institute. And that is a cohort-based class that focuses on 5 skill areas: professional communication, data analysis, strategic thinking, process design, and project management. And already people have given me some amazing feedback. For example, we teach one lesson on email management because as you grow as an operator, it's very easy to go from, I started off in my career entry level getting 1 email a day. Now as a GM, I get hundreds of emails a day. How do you manage that? And so for the first time, a bunch of people came back to me and said,
I think we lost him.
Yeah. Okay, I thought it was just going to be me. Is he back? I can't hear him anymore.
You cut out for a second, but you're back.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I cannot hear him though. Let me just... All right, 1 second. I'm going to reload.
You're back. I can hear.
Technical issues, people. So sorry. Let's try and reload the gather, see what happens. Let's see if we're all good to go. Slowly but surely. All right.
And that's basically Upslope in a nutshell. And I'd love to hear people's feedback, whether they
Rahul? All
Yes.
right, I can hear you now. I've lost you for like, I don't know, a good 3-4 minutes.
Oh, wow. Weird. Well, I wrapped up.
Oh, all right. So I got to the part where you were talking about, identifying the gaps in education and then tackling them. Do you wanna go from there? Because I missed all of that.
Yeah, I'll just riff a little bit. So we would basically look at what skills our trainees have. And are you still there?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I think I may have lost you.
I'm here.
Oh, I saw thumbs up. All right. So we look at the skills trainees have, and then we figure out what is the gap between where they are and where they want to go. We put them through a boot camp, a cohort-based course that teaches in 5 skill areas: professional communication, data analysis, project management, process improvement, and strategy. And then we hook them up with a mentor who will help them gain the skills they need that we're missing. And we can, after the boot camp, we can promise that mentor that the person is trained adequately to be able to help them. And then we help them with placement. So we help them find jobs, apply, create a resume, portfolio, salary negotiation. And that's the whole program.
So you're basically going back to the one-to-one kind of strategy that we were talking about at the very beginning. So like the kind of one-to-one mentorship. I don't think you can hear me. Can everyone else hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. So I don't know. Rahul, can you hear me? Don't think you can.
He's muted.
Yeah.
Rahul, you're muted.
Rahul might want to relog. You can't hear me. What do you think, David, about this whole topic? I don't think you're based in the US. Are you in the UK?
I'm in the US.
You're in the US. All right. So did you have an experience with like college, and like what do you think in terms of like operations and education? What's your, as we wait for Rahul to get back?
I am back. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Yeah,
unfortunately, I'm pretty far removed. It's interesting thinking about, a 17-year-old and 18-year-old trying to figure out that they want to be an operations manager. When I was 17, what I went to college and wanted to do is certainly not what I'm doing at 42.
Right.
So, that's just interesting, your approach to how you're explaining to these students, what the business world looks like. There's certainly parts of going to school where you learn the skills of meeting deadlines and turning in papers and talking in front of people. And those are all great skills to have in life. But you're right. Things like managing your email, those are things that you don't really, you're not specifically taught. You probably learned them through experience, but yeah, so it's interesting, bro.
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that. Interestingly, I found the most interest to be people who are mostly in their 30s, which is very intriguing to me. I expected to hear more from college-age people, but we've got actually a pretty broad range of people who are a few years out of college up to those who are executives, which is interesting because it gets back to that point I was making about how school really buckets people by their age. And instead, we are bucketing people, irregardless of that. They all wanted to learn based on, what gaps they felt they had, regardless of where they are in their career. And I thought that was pretty fascinating.
Yeah, I definitely see that in an older demographic, the, post-school, post-grad type who are, looking to get into the corporate experience, I think that's just very different. If you've ever worked at a startup versus working for a huge enterprise, it's night and day.
Mm-hmm.
I have done both. I agree.
Yeah, same. And so it's the way you navigate both of those scenarios is very different.
Yeah, which is why it's so important to generate this kind of education and like really help people, like, because we experienced it, or like Rahul, for example, you said you experienced both of them. So now you can help people kind of save that time of trial and error by educating them on the right path, which is so essential. Yeah, David.
Yeah, and I like this concept that you mentioned of training or bringing experience to people by real world examples, as opposed to following a tutorial and getting it to print hello world to the screen is one thing, but build a thing where you're going to see some result that's useful to you right now. Mm-hmm. Is, in my opinion, the best. That's how I've learned every piece of software that I use, is just gone in and said, well, I need to do something that's going to impact me or benefit me. And that's how I learned it, not just following some random tutorial.
Yeah, I think that makes all the difference. Like, for example, we had a lesson on cold outreach, and the homework was to go on LinkedIn, find 10 people you wanted to prospectively mentor you, and send a mail merge to them trying to convince them to mentor you. And what this teaches people is, like, you'll get rejected a lot when you're doing cold outreach. How to use mail merge, which is very, very powerful if you learn it early on. And, in the upside case, like, you find a mentor who wants to help you grow. And just on Tuesday, we did a lesson on negotiation, and there was this TED Talk that I really loved called Rejection Therapy, where the person tried to get rejected by people for whatever, like asking for a discount or asking them on a date or trying to speak through a megaphone on an airplane or something. And they tried to get rejected 100 days in a row. And I basically told the learners, hey, go pick 5 of the things off this list and go do them in your community. Because it makes you want to ask for things, and it inures you to the pain of rejection, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, it's all very much based on real things, and people come back and say this was really, really instrumental in helping me learn the skill. So I think there's something there.
That's really fascinating. I love that kind of approach, and that's where the idea behind having these kind of Thursday events was as well to have a practical, either a conversation or a practical workshop on things that I see from the community. Maybe, I'm gathering interest and see, okay, David here wants to learn how to do that specific action. So then I invite somebody here to do that for 30 minutes. And then, there's Q&A. So it's, I think it really works when you put people like into practice, and just like, we said, just like not following a tutorial on YouTube, which is kind of daunting nowadays. You gain a lot from being there, getting your hands dirty, and also like being in communities and like kind of confronting yourself and your experiences with other people. Did you have a college experience then, Rahul? Like, did you study in the US? Was your career, did you know you were always going to be in operations, or how did that start?
Yeah, so this is sort of all over the place. Yes, I went to university in the US. I was in Washington, D.C. at a school called Georgetown. How did I end up there? I wanted to be a doctor for a really long time. I grew up in a medical family, and then I shadowed some doctors while I was in high school, and God, their job is miserable. It's so much note-taking these days, more so than actually helping people. And so my father, who is a physician, is like, you're not, I can see on your face you don't like this. You shouldn't do this. It seems like you want to be a business person. And so I'm like, all right, that seems interesting. And then I started looking around at what business people could do. And I had all these friends who were interested in finance. And they were, of course, interested because it makes you a lot of money. And so I decided, you know what, maybe I'll go look at that. And then I got an internship in the finance space, and it was so boring. It was like mind-numbingly boring. And so then my school happened to have an ops major. And I thought, well, that's cool. I've never seen that anywhere else. Why don't I go try that out? And so I did that. I loved it. Did everything from like supply chain management, management science, optimization problems, queuing theory, like all sorts of weird academic stuff that's also very helpful, especially if you run a factory, which is how operations is taught these
So
days.
were you using no code back then, or were you doing things that
I don't
today
think,
we
like,
call no
meaningful
code?
no-code solutions existed back then.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Maybe you were already doing no code, but you didn't know you were.
Yeah, so I tried to found a startup in undergrad, and all my engineers laughed at me. So I learned how to code based on that, which was kind of interesting. Yeah, I don't know. College in itself was good for the brand because Georgetown is fairly well known in the US. In terms of the skills, the skill that I learned that was most valuable was how to use Excel. As many undergrad business schools teach that. But above and beyond that, I don't know. Like skill-wise, I mostly learned it by managers yelling at me at my jobs. So, yeah.
Which is why it's so important that now you take the reins and you help people not to get shouted at, and you educate them the proper way.
Correct.
Yeah, I know.
Exactly.
I was in a primary setting, and sometimes, as you were saying, schools are more focused on age and what the right thing should be taught rather than life experience. But I have to say, in the UK, even though it was a primary, we were already like teaching primary school kids business, and we're going to give you £5. You need to come up with an idea and generate revenue on that, £5. And so to me, I'm from Italy. To me, that was just already like kind of mind blowing. These, 8-year-old children coming up with a business plan and making, 300 times as much we've given them on the first day. So that, that's really inspiring. And coding, and I have a lot of faith in people like you that are trying to educate other people and education in general, because I think we have to be kind of the advocate for, this education revolution, and like we need to help, share the knowledge as much as we can for other people. David, you got your mic. Do you want to say something?
Oh, yeah. So,
Yeah.
Rahul, continuing on your conversation here, how do you see, no-code tools in, with the students that are coming to you? And I'm imagining that you're getting students that are looking for operational roles, or they're in an operational role and they're looking to expand. And how are you using or introducing them to no-code tools? But on top of that, where is their technical acumen, and how does that play into it?
Yeah.
That's a very good question.
This is a really good question. So one of the interesting things is, when people set out to start edtech companies, often they come from the product standpoint of, I need to build software. I took the exact opposite approach. I basically said, everything I need is available off the shelf. So we run lessons on Zoom, although maybe I'll switch that to Gather after Claudia's ringing endorsement.
I'll build you a school if you need.
Yeah, so it's like on Slack, it's Zoom, it's a lot of like, I run things using Typeform and Zapier to shuttle my data around and solicit feedback. In terms of the actual learners, I try and ease them in by doing like very narrow solutions for problems. For example, when I was in undergrad, there was not an easy way to scrape data. And now you can get a tool like Phantom Buster or Seamless AI or something like that to rip data out of LinkedIn. And so for the lesson on cold outreach, I basically show them Phantom Buster. I say, hey, there's a free trial of this thing. You should go check it out and see if you can find your list of 10 prospective mentors that way. So that's one of the ways we do it. Almost every lesson at least talks about what solutions are out there for things like project management. We talk about ClickUp and Trello and Asana and all those other tools. And then with regard to like the actual tools that are like the power tools of no code, let's say, like your Zapiers of the world, that are really connecting up a bunch of tools, cobbling them together, letting you do these very complicated actions. That really comes out in our process improvement unit, where we talk about, well, all right, you see someone, they're doing these 10 steps that are all manual. 5 of them could go away. Let's talk about how we can make them go away. And that's sort of where the no-code pieces come in. With regard to technical acumen, it's mixed. I think it somewhat correlates to experience, but it also correlates to industry. Because, for example, we've got one gentleman who comes from the healthcare industry, and he basically can't choose his own tooling for HIPAA compliance reasons. And so all he can do is either convince his senior leadership to adopt a tool, which is very expensive for them, or he can figure out, how do I make my existing tools work better for me? And that's where the email lesson was actually extremely helpful to him. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, no, that's great. So, and it was a bit of a leading question in, my personal approach to no code, and I'm making air quotes, is, I kind of came from a more technical background, right? Mm-hmm. And then no code to me was like, oh, great. Now I don't have to write code to do all these things that I was writing code for. I've got a thing that'll do it, and that's great. And I can just drag and drop it, and I can speed up development.
Yeah.
But so how do you see rolling out no code tool? Like you mentioned, there was nothing to scrape the web. Well, there was Python.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So, how do you see, how do you interact with people that are coming to you with very low technical acumen, and you're giving them no code tools, but are they grasping the full concept of what's going on? As an operations person, right? Not just a office guy, but as an operations person, are they grasping the entire concept of why this no code tool is being used? And how are you explaining that to your students?
Yeah, so I'm technical as well. My main coding language is JavaScript, but Python is great, beautiful, super spectacular for scraping. With regard to ops people and training them on no code, at the companies I've worked at, a lot of operators focus on what the tool does for them and not so much on how to extend it. So at my last company before Upslope, we had an admin dashboard that was built on Retool, and the people who interfaced with the dashboard mainly thought about, all right, this is my daily workflow. The dashboard's going to help me accomplish X, Y, and Z. Great. If I need something else, I will ask, the engineering team to help me, which is interesting.
Right.
Like a lot of people who adopt no code do it because they want to decrease the engineering dependency. In that particular case, it was a little tricky because Retool was interfacing directly with the proprietary Postgres database. So there were security and consistency issues that people cared about. So at least on that side, people didn't really care about how extensible these tools could be and how you could link them up to each other. But when I talk to people about efficiency and making steps go away and making people not have to do work, and I'm very fortunate in that the learners are wanting to be more strategic, right? They're wanting to be biz ops managers or people who work on this sort of vendor selection and rollout. They more frequently get it, at least from that perspective of we can make things go away for your staff.
Awesome.
Rahul, what's your definition of an operator? Because I know in the US, it's kind of solid now, like the role, in businesses, there's different ops roles. But I'm thinking, do you do this remotely? Do you have students from all over the world? Are you just based in the US? And yeah, what's your definition? If you were to attract more folks from the other side of the pond, what would that be?
Yeah, so right now we actually do have a couple of students from the UK, which is very cool. cohort 1 is all East Coast US, just because the timing is easier for me to do it live. But I will figure that problem out in cohort 2, which is where those UK people are. And then who are operators, right? Very good question. Some people self-select, right? They say my job title has ops in it. I'm an operator. I think it's actually much more expansive than that. I almost would be willing to say that anybody who is non-technical in a business and at least somewhat thinks about making things better or more optimal is an operator.
Like an optimizer.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I'm definitely not a technical person, but I love no code. And, I'm just thinking, like, how can I deploy this idea that I'm having? And I think that's when the operation comes, when you probably don't have a technical background like me, but I still want to be able to realize what I'm thinking, the project that I have in my mind. And that's when I go to the no-code tools and see what I can do with them. But yeah, going back to David's, point of view, obviously it's harder when you have to make sense of what you're doing. Like, I think that's a great role for an educator, to make sure that your students are using the no-code tools, but they're making sense of why they're using it, what's happening if they're, dragging and dropping things, what's happening in the background of that. That's really important if you want to give them some sort of foundation.
Yeah, whenever I talk about tools, I almost do it with my vendor selection hat on. I basically put the entire menu of tools that can accomplish a certain thing. I say, well, this one's good at this, but it sucks at this. And this one's great on a lot of things, but it also has these very glaring flaws. And I let them come to their own conclusion about how to solve the problem, whatever that problem happens to be, because not every tool is right for everyone.
Very true, very true. Do you get partnerships with the tools that you teach? Like, are you supported by them, or?
I'm not big enough yet, so no, but one day for sure.
With your students, do you present them with a preferred stack, or do you encourage them to find their own path?
So I list out as many tools as possible. I lean towards ones that I've used simply because I can be more open and honest about what they're capable of, simply because I have experience.
Yeah.
But I don't.
Like 5 of them come out a day, it seems.
Yeah, exactly. I can't keep up at this point. But I basically say, like, I don't care how you do it. I care that you figure out how to solve the problem. Yeah. Right, and I'll help you. If you choose something off the shelf that I've never used, I'll sit down with you and we'll figure it out.
What is your favorite stack, though? Now I'm curious.
Who, me?
Yeah, both of you. You can both answer this question.
Airtable, Make, Softer.
Awesome. I met Softer today at the summit. Softer people. Airtable.
I don't know that one. I'll have to check it out. I know Make, and people are saying that Make is in the long run a lot more affordable than Zapier. So I'll have to check them out. I've always been a big Zapier proponent, mostly because their customer service has been nice to me in the past.
Zapier's pricing model, if you need to add more than 2 connections, you have to pay.
Yeah.
With Make, you're not limited in Make.
Interesting. What have I done? So a cool no-code project I did recently, or like, I guess it's not recently anymore because we've been in a pandemic for 2 years now. But at the beginning of the pandemic, I helped build like surveillance systems for sports teams and whatnot to like survey their players, sort of after the lockdowns were easing up and people could go outside and play sports. And so I worked for a couple of soccer clubs, a couple of schools, and I built these forms in Typeform that would collect information about them. And of course, it was like we tried to keep it all very secure. And then that would hook up to Typeform, and then it would email the nurses or whoever on staff needed to hear about that. And then if there was something like really bad, like, oh, I have these crazy symptoms, like it would hook up to Twilio and it would send a text saying, hey, there's this urgent alert, go deal with it. Yeah, that was pretty cool. I served probably on the order of like 10,000 people doing that, which is great.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's impressive. Well done. Well, if you do have any questions for any tool makers, and that goes to all of you here, I'm meeting up with them after. I'm going back to the conference, so there's people from Airtable, Make, Software, all of them. So feel free to just drop your questions in the Discord to me, and I'll be very happy to ask them on your behalf and let you know.
Okay.
All right. I don't think, do we have any more questions here for Rahul? Rahul, thank you so much for your talk. We try to have technical workshops here on a Thursday, but I absolutely love these kind of talks as well, because I think it's so important to just like treat no code as a bigger thing than just like learning, which is very important, and we do it, but sometimes you have to have these kind of conversations as well, because it just it helps with everything else that we're doing with our operations, as we were saying. Jeff,
well,
you're
thank you
here.
for having me.
Oh, you're very, very welcome. Very pleased. Did anyone else have any more questions, or we can wrap it up?
None from me. It was nice talking to you, Rahul.
Thank you for all the great questions. Pleasure speaking with you as well.
Yeah, that was great. All right. Well, thank you so much again for being here, for giving us this talk. Thank you so much for the people attending, David. Thank you so much. Your questions were awesome. So I really appreciated having you here today. And Jeff, didn't get to speak to you. I can see your little dance. You can press on X, I think, or is it Z? Yeah, can have a little dance. There you go. But yeah, we're gonna be here next week, Thursday, same time, same place. So stay tuned, and I wish you all a great rest of your day or evening, wherever time it is where you are.
Okay, bye.
All right, take care, everyone. See you next time. Bye, and bye to the YouTube as well.